those who are already in. So this was our day one. I'm sure many of you were there and some of you who were not there. Look forward to see many of you join next year. Because there are two most important things which we think that mutual fund distributors should be equipped with. The first skill is communication, and the VCX factor is all about communication skills, and the second is about the growth. So this year it was on communicating what the growth is. So friends, let's, I think by the time all of us join back, I think we should have some incentive. Tea is a better incentive, it seems. Tea on the table. No, you need to stretch. You need to meet, you need to talk. That's what we have seen. No, when you have expressed and when you have talked, you will be willing to receive. Yeah, come early. So, perfect. Can we have the slide changer, please, by the time we settle down? Or before we begin, let's do something which is our normal, regular stuff. Before any meeting, let's all stand. Whoever is there, we will all stand. And most of the time, what I have observed, after this, the people, yes, whoever is not in the room also get inside. Okay? So let's do something different now. ये तो कर ही रहे हैं हम लोग, okay? So, sir, we are on the third day of our conference. Officially second day. One was a pre-conference day, which was about, we call it VCXX talks. That's about the growth factor. And in that, each and every individual comes up on the stage and speak. So that was the overall idea. So we do something like this. We tap the hands like this because this is connected with your subconscious. So when we tap and when we visualize something which we want in our life, the idea is whatever is there in your subconscious that gets manifested. So Janak bhai nahi kar payenge. Because of obvious reason. So let's do it together, and we will also say something which is our what you call slogan. Okay. So FFF की क्या पहचान? FFF की क्या पहचान? FFF की क्या पहचान? So that was नई ऊर्जा नया मुकाम. और एक we also call freedom fighters, like financial freedom fraternities like of freedom fighters, wherein अगर देश को आज अगर फिर से आज़ादी चाहिए तो that is on finance, for financial freedom. So we also have one more slogan for VC especially, देशभक्ति का एक ही नारा, सबको मिले VC का सहारा. VC actually stands for not only volatility coaches, but value creation, which each and every individual in this room is trying to create for their own investors. So let's all tell together, देशभक्ति का एक ही नारा, देशभक्ति का एक ही नारा. Give yourself a big round. And a high five to people around you so that we get connected. At least 2, 3, 4. Sir is also there. Thank you so much. So some of you who are sitting back, you can come a little forward also. And we'll just invite our slides, please. Yes. So It's a pleasure to invite the first panel speaker, Mr. Ganesh Mohan, who is the Managing Director and the CEO of Bajaj Asset Management Company Limited. Welcome, Ganesh. I think, sir, have a seat. Sir can have both the roles, huh? Not only in mutual fund industry, but also in Bollywood. How many of us agree to this? Say yes. 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 Okay. And then we have Mr. Venugopal Mangat, CIO, HSBC AMC. Very welcome, sir. This is a good combination wherein people in sales and people managing and also people managing not only the company but also the distribution and also the investment. So it's a combination, and we will have a beautiful beautiful learning for all of us over here. Next is Mr. Anand Radhakrishnan. I think with a lot of new energy, Sundaram Mutual Fund is all ready to take the next leap for the next decade, and I am sure under his leadership things will be at new heights. Mohit Bhatia ji, again local आपके दिल्ली के हैं ये and दिल्ली वाले, so we really look forward, and during our sessions in the FFF professional meets also we had a session with him which was quite interesting and in a different way which was created. Mr. Dinshaw Irani, so looking forward to listen to you. For me it will be the first time listening. Yay! Mr. Chandra Prakash Pandya from Tata Asset Management Company. सर ऐसी तालियों में ना वो निकलेगा नहीं जो हम लोग चाहते हैं. So the idea is, most of the time my observation is that when you want to extract something from the speakers who have a wisdom of wealth, I think that will only come when the moderator is there. So Ashutosh Sinha, so it's a hat trick for Ashutosh at our conference for taking the control of the panel. What do you say? So friends, I think with this panel, I think the panel sitting on the stage is managing a lot of wealth, huh? And let me also tell you, the people sitting in this room is also managing a lot of wealth because they are all mutual fund distributors, and the accumulated assets under management is over 1 lakh crore in this room, and there are 350 mutual fund distributors in this room. So that's how the whole room is, and we really look forward to have the growth of this AUM also as distributors to make it 2 lakh crore next year when we meet again, and all of you also grow double. So that's how we all look forward to. Over to you, Ashutosh.
Thank you so much, Kanak ji. थोड़ी हिंदी थोड़ी अंग्रेजी मिलाकर चलेगा या पूरी अंग्रेजी? Mix? Okay, we'll try and make it mix. Any other language? Because I can't possibly. Maybe some others can. Mangat Sahab can Malayalam? So, Ganesh, Tamil. So there you go. So
I can do Gujarati if you guys want.
Oh, super. I can speak a little bit of
Punjabi भी बड़ी चंगी हैगी मेरी.
Oh. Anyway, so if we try too much, maybe, as they say in Punjabi, sirswa mitti na ho jaye. Oh. So I'll tell you what sirswa mitti, just for the fun of it, before we begin. The equivalent word in Malayalam is nashipichu. Sarvanash, Satyanash. So let's not try and do something like that. But we'll try and make it as conversational as possible. We'll try and make it as fun as possible. And we want you to be asking questions as well. So please be ready with your questions. And you can direct your questions to any of the experts here. It'll make my job easier as well. So I'll try and speak as little as possible. But as we begin, Ganesh, I'd like to... We are going from strength to strength as an industry. The opportunity, and some of these people have created that opportunity, is mind-boggling. Yesterday, I was speaking to someone, and internally, it's a Bombay company. I won't name it it's not a public company. So they said internally we have raised the bar, thanks to AI. Every person's output is now up 10x. How can the industry do that?
So I think, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I think firstly we are very, very fortunate, to be in this industry, in this country at this time, right? We are actually going through a significant, I would say, phase where India's GDP is growing from about $2,500 to almost $5,000 in the next 6 to 7 years. In this, Ashutosh, we actually did a study to see that what happens in other countries, what has happened before when other countries have gone through this journey, right? And there we saw that while GDP increased by a factor of 2, right, the mutual fund AUM increased by a factor of 4, right? So what happens is there is disproportionate change that happens, once economies cross a certain threshold, in a sense, right? But then when you add on top of that, what else is changing just because of technology, what you refer to as AI, but I would say more broadly, as day-to-day technology also can play a huge role. We have found that, for example, on WhatsApp, transactions are significantly happening today. We are seeing additional new technologies that you can bring to the table, which really expand the ability for us, for distribution partners, for investors, to actually grow their businesses manyfold. So 2 years back, when we had done a study on where the industry could be, right, by FY30, we had predicted a 4x growth. I think that 4x we will probably reach much sooner than we are actually thinking of. Right? So I think the opportunity is only just beginning. And I congratulate and I wish everybody in this room, who is there in this industry at this point of time, that if you do the right things, you can be significant beneficiaries going forward.
So if I use a cricket analogy, and allow me to say that, Venugopal, how does one try and be the Rahul Dravid's cover drive in a situation like do the right thing? Rahul Dravid is known to do that. He's the wall, or he has been the wall, and also brilliant with his cover drives. But just do it right. What should some of these people and the industry, in a wider sense, do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a good question. One needs to balance the both aspects in just being defensive at times and also being aggressive. And I agree completely with what Ganesh mentioned. This is a great opportunity for all of us sitting in this room and outside in the country as well to really create wealth over the next 5 to 7 years. This decade clearly belongs to India, and my travels outside India, everybody concurs with this view that this is the decade for India, and sitting in India and investing in companies here, I think we have the best opportunity to create that wealth. While having said that, I think you need to also give the right advice to investors as to how you should participate in this market. Give the right kind of products to the right set of people, and in a sense, give them the best possible advice to create wealth. Ensure that they stay invested. I think that's the most important aspect of advice, or most important advice that you can give your investors. In equities, we've all seen this historically. The longer you remain invested, the more probability that you make a reasonably good return, and the higher probability that you will not make a loss. And to that extent, I think, and given the fact that India is growing and is likely to double in terms of our economic size over the next 7 years, there is a whole lot of opportunity that is being thrown up. And one needs to be really patiently invested in this period. And the lot of people keep asking questions on when is the likely correction going to come in the markets, and how deep is that correction going to be? Should we switch out from one or to the other? I think the best advice you can give is to remain patiently invested, so that you reap the benefit of this whole journey by 2030 or even beyond that. India is likely to do well over a longer period of time, and I think the best thing one can give as advice is to remain patiently invested. So to answer your question, yes, be a Rahul Dravid, ask people to remain consistent, be focused on their wealth creation goals, understand that India is on the right path and just stay invested.
I think you've just summed it up very well. And if I were to just mention it, because that's just that cricket thing and just doesn't get off me. It may rain, like in the test match today and yesterday, but you have to stay invested.
Absolutely. I think a good analogy, I think like the rain, the weather conditions, especially in Mumbai, it's been raining quite heavily, disrupting, travel, etc. But that doesn't deter people from doing what they have to do. And I think if you remain invested patiently, despite corrections, despite all the noise that is around you, you will definitely gain the most out of the markets. And we are really fortunate to be in this position at this time.
Ashutosh,
Yeah.
can I add something to this?
Yeah, please. This is a conversation, so.
So actually, I'll start in Hindi. I think
बिल्कुल,
everybody
बिल्कुल.
is worried about talking in them. Let me start.
Okay, ठीक
So
है.
हमने एक स्टडी की थी पिछले 10 साल में निफ्टी 50 214% ऊपर था सितंबर मिडिल से लेके लास्ट 14 सितंबर मिडिल टिल दिस सितंबर मिडिल राइट 214% ऊपर था और हम बात कर रहे हैं 2474 दिनों की ट्रेडिंग डेज 2474 ट्रेडिंग डेज आप सिर्फ 10 ट्रेडिंग डेज निकाल दीजिए उसमें से 10 बेस्ट दिन जो थे NSE 50 के तो आपका रिटर्न रह जाता है 90%। आप सोचिए कितना लॉस हुआ जस्ट 10 दिन निकालने से। तो इसीलिए जैसे इन्होंने बोला कंसिस्टेंसी रहनी चाहिए, आप डटे रहें बाजार में कि बाजार का ऊपर और टॉप और बॉटम आप कभी प्रिडिक्ट नहीं कर सकते। ना ही मैं 31 साल से बाजार में हूँ, मैंने आज तक प्रिडिक्ट नहीं किया टॉप और बॉटम। किया भी होगा तो शायद एक फ्लूक से हो गया होगा, डिज़ाइन से नहीं हुआ। तो इसलिए डटे रहना चाहिए बाजार में, इन्वेस्टेड रहना चाहिए और कभी भी इन्वेस्टर को यहाँ से वहाँ निकालना है तो करते रहिए, लेकिन डटे रहिए।
5-day test match. 5-day test match. Okay. So, I'm just reminded of 1992. Some few veterans will remember 1992, the beginning of the industries, almost. So 1992, the industry began. So now just put yourself in that position and see, आपने कितनी आसानी से लोगों की दुआ पाई है, क्योंकि आपने उन्हें इस बाजार का हिस्सा बनने में और बनाने में मदद की है और साथ में आपके लिए एक करियर भी बना है. So since 1992, look at what the industry has done and what has happened to you, your families and people who worked closely with you. So some of those points to be kept in mind. Okay, on behalf of Tata AMC, so give us a sense of how do you see the situation emerging now? We've heard a big picture of the story. Give us a sense of that.
So first of all, I would say that from before coming to the market,
Sure.
Investor expectation and an audience here would, or all our partners here would know this better than me. Investor expectations are running very high. Over the last 4-5 years, I think all of us have made a lot of wealth. And return expectations are running as if can the market sustain 25% plus CAGR. And I think I would start by saying that the first thing that we all need to say is that a 25% CAGR is not sustainable. And we all need to bring our expectations down. Though the economy will do well and the big picture does look very good, but it is a test match and not a T20. So वक्त लगता है पैसा बनाने में, इतना आसान नहीं है. For example, I know of a lot of businesses or people who run businesses and they have started telling me that हम business करते क्यों हैं, शेयर मार्केट में डाल देंगे तो शायद से ज़्यादा कमा लेंगे. That's a real sentiment these days. Coming to the business environment, I fully agree with my seniors here. I think the environment is genuinely very strong. All the business, or let's say the geopolitical environment in the world is such, especially with China +1 as a term that has come by, you are seeing India in a sweet spot. But usme, I must give a word of caution here is that हर business करने वाला इंडिया में स्केल करना इतना आसान नहीं है उसके लिए. it is not easy to, let's say, for example, acquisition of land itself. If you want to create a 500,000 crore project in India, it takes a while for Indian entrepreneurs to still acquire land of 100 acres or so. So it is, what I'm trying to say is that though everything does look good, but it is an execution issue, it is a scale issue, and it will take time. I think with the way markets have gone up so much, what has happened is that the small cap, and I manage a small cap fund, for example, and most companies that I track today, when I started managing the small cap fund in 2018, trailing PE used to be, or let's say 1 year forward PE used to be 6, 5, and today we don't see anything below 30 most of the times. So which means that expectations are running higher today. Most companies, in my opinion, will do a good job over the next 5 years, 10 years. But one needs to keep in mind that the next 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, maybe the reality is slightly lower than expectations. So one needs to keep that long-term view. We all will do, ultimately we all will do very well. If $5 trillion economy happens, per capita GDP goes to $5,000 or so, certainly all of us will be spending more and consumption demand will be much higher. In the previous session, I heard India is going to be a very large consumption-oriented economy. I fully agree with it. So, बने रहना चाहिए, but short term में return expectation कम करना चाहिए.
शायद T20 का 2-4 ही दिन मिले. Anand, your picture, because again during this mishmash of long-term view and the short-term, occasionally you will get that opportunity in the markets where you'll get an opportunity to enter, hopefully for some people, HDFC Bank at mouth-watering prices. You know, we've forgotten the days when Infosys used to be richly valued at 30x. Those days are gone. So put a perspective to what it means and how does it ultimately get to the bigger picture of wealth creation for people like here.
If I try to explain market over long term, I equate it to a marathon running. You have to cover this distance for a very long distance, and it takes a lot of time and effort to cover that. Broadly, there are two methods to cover that distance. Suppose, let us say, 15, 20 years of you want to remain invested in the market to make wealth. One is to just run at a constant cadence or pace. Is one way of doing it, which is like what the SIPs do it, various other behavioral tools do it. Markets don't run at a constant pace, unfortunately. It covers the marathon distance with short sprints of 3 years, 4 years, and then sharp falls for a year, etc. So while we want to run at a constant pace or a cadence, market is a very volatile animal. Some of you, I was chatting with some of the volatility coaches, which is a nice thing. So we need to handle this volatility. We need to get a grip of, after a big run, what is going to come next, and mentally and financially be prepared for it. So while you have a longer term visibility of wealth creation, if you don't negotiate the shorter term sprints well, you might actually end up creating negative alpha for your investors. So that is point one. Second point is, as advisors, you also have the responsibility to create alpha for your investors. As much as fund managers here, I'm no longer a fund manager, have the responsibility to create alpha. So there is the fund manager alpha and there is advisors alpha. Now, how do advisors create alpha? So what is the advisors alpha? If you pick up a flexi cap fund, the average returns of the flexi cap fund over 3 years of all the flexi cap fund is X, your client's investments in flexi cap return should have given X plus 2% at least, annualized return. That is your alpha. The industry generates some alpha and advisors generate. How do you create? I again say there are two methods again to create it. One is you having significant knowledge edge on which fund is good, and therefore you consistently able to pick up those funds which create alpha. Second is you have a this is called knowledge alpha. Second is called behavioral alpha. That is you handhold your clients during volatile phases so that they don't get off the train, which we discussed about. And that is, my feeling is, knowledge alpha is very tough because performance cycles happen, good fund managers suddenly start delivering poor returns and vice versa. Whereas behavioral alpha is relatively addressable. So I feel that advisors should pay little attention, and of course all of you should be doing it, and that is the way we will negotiate the volatility. So combination of having a view of long-term versus marathon versus short sprints, and splitting your value addition from manufacturing alpha to advisors alpha.
Very interesting. And since you've raised this point about the tough times and how do you communicate, Mohit, would you like to come in and talk about how do you actually help in that behavioral part, and how do you communicate? A lot of people, we are going through a great time since 24th of March 2020. That ride has been unbelievable, but someday you will face that reality.
So I think this is absolutely shaping up to what I thought should be coming to me. So you know,
Wow,
I think
that's good then.
no. So what I wanted to really highlight here is that all of us, including myself, you know, we've been talking about usually, you know, and I've been in the industry for a long time now, is about these 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I think
Just keep the mic close, please.
Firstly, what needs to really change is, and we are talking about wealth creation here, you know, we have a great, you know, business environment, great tailwinds, everything seems to be in place, but something that needs to be emphasized from the behavioral part, and that's the only thing I think needs to be emphasized, is that start thinking 25 years. Okay, so when you're investing, doing your SIP, it's not about 5 years or 10 years or whatever. It has to be 25 years, and it can really make a difference. And it's very simple mathematics that even if you are growing at, say, 10% on your portfolio, the difference between 25 and 30 years is a 5 times. So if you're saving, say, 1 lakh rupee a year, or say maybe 10,000 rupees a month, the difference in your end portfolio at the end of 20 years, 25 years, 30 years can be very significant, right? And like Dinshaw, you know, pointed out about staying out of the market, I think it has, you know, even if you look at it from very simple mathematics, you know, being an engineer, I'd like to, you know, bring in that part, is from a simple probability perspective. If you have, I'm sure all of you here would agree, there's a strong probability or a very high probability, say upwards of 70%, that markets over the next 15, 20, 25 years should give us CAGR of about, at the rate of the Indian nominal GDP. I'm sure all of you agree here, right? Which is about 10, 12%. So if there's a 70 to 80% probability that markets will give you this kind of returns, which will translate more or less in your mutual fund portfolios. In fact, on behalf of the industry, I can say we've delivered even better. And the probability of markets going down or not delivering that is, say, 25, 30%. So mathematically, every time you are guessing against that, you know, you are lowering your probability of making that return, right? So if you just stay put with that 70% probability in mind that market will give me, you know, 10, 12, 14% returns over the next 15, 20, 25 years, I think it's the single biggest message, according to Mitch, which, you know, one can take to your investors.
I'm loving the idea that you speak Punjabi as well and Gujarati as well. So that's a deadly combination. So your views, they'd love to hear and they'd like to learn from you as well.
On the markets.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So-
that's where the aggression of Punjabis and the wealth creation of Gujaratis.
Punjabi, he's taking that away from me. Huh? I'm a Punjabi from Delhi.
But I didn't hear you speaking.
Dinshaw is a good friend for a long time.
Yeah. So anyway, Hindi?
Hindi, English, as you wish.
Hindi?
Hindi, English, both, why not?
ठीक है जी हिंदी समझ लीजिए हिंदुस्तान, हमारा भारत एक देश नहीं और एक कंपनी होती है, और वो कंपनी आपको बोलती है कि देखो भाई, मेरा जो आपने हिस्टोरिक ग्रोथ रेट देखा था वो अभी उससे मैं डबल ग्रो होने वाला हूँ आगे चल के, और आपने जो मेरा डेट इक्विटी देखा था 1.3 1.4x जो था, अभी वो आधा हो गया, 0.3 0.4 के आसपास मेरा डेट इक्विटी घूम रहा है, और जो मेरे रिटर्न रेशोज़ हैं जो 6-7% हुआ करते थे, अभी 14-15% हो गए। तो कंपनी को आप बिना सोचे आप उसको रीरेट कर देते। मेरे हिसाब से वही हमारे मार्केट को हुआ है, रीरेट हो गया है, दुनिया ने हमें रीरेट कर दिया है। हम खुद अपने आप को पीछे खींच रहे हैं, सोच रहे हैं कि इतना महंगा, लाइक मैं सबको बताता था भेल भारत हेवी इलेक्ट्रिकल्स, मुझे याद है 8-9 के पी में हम बेचते थे उसको, कि हम बोलते बहुत एक्सपेंसिव हो गया भाई, चलो बेच दो। अभी 30 के पी में लोग लेते हैं उसको, क्योंकि आपका फ्यूचर ग्रोथ बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है यहाँ से। सो मुझे नहीं लगता कि बाजार के वैल्यूएशन देख के आप सोचो कि नहीं भाई ज़रा थम जाओ, ज़रा रुक जाओ। जैसे मैंने बोला कि बाजार में रहना ही सबसे बेस्ट रहता है, और जबकि आपको पता है कि आपके ग्रोथ रेट्स इतने बढ़िया हैं, तो आपको डटे रहना चाहिए यहाँ पे। और एक्चुअली वैल्यूएशन भी, जैसे हम अपने आप को भी समझाते हैं जब देखते हैं ये सब, जैसे कोई ऐसी सेक्टर्स हैं जहाँ ग्रोथ रेट सिंगल डिजिट्स है, मिड सिंगल से हाई सिंगल डिजिट्स है, लेकिन उसके वैल्यूएशन 70-80 टाइम है। क्यों? क्योंकि वो MNC कंपनी, हमें पसंद नहीं है। ग्रोथ रेट ही होना चाहिए हर एक कंपनी में, और अर्निंग्स ग्रोथ भी हो सकता है, या तो EBITDA पे लेवल पे भी ग्रोथ हो सकता है, जो भी आपको ठीक लगे वो देखना चाहिए, और उसके हिसाब से आपको देखना चाहिए कि कंपनी का ग्रोथ है तो जस्टिफाई आप वैल्यूएशन कर सकते हैं। और दूसरा एक और चीज़ जो हो रही है आज की तारीख में, वो ये है कि इंटरेस्ट रेट्स कम हो रहे हैं। नॉर्मली एमर्जिंग मार्केट्स में, क्योंकि काफ़ी डेट हैवी होते हैं एमर्जिंग मार्केट्स, तो जब इंटरेस्ट रेट्स कम होते हैं तो आप नॉर्मली जब DCF कैलकुलेट करते हैं, डिस्काउंटेड कैश फ्लोज कैलकुलेट करते हैं, तो आप वो इंटरेस्ट रेट का ही फैक्टर लगाते हैं। जैसे ही वो रेट का फैक्टर कम हो जाता है तो आपकी जो एग्जिस्टिंग कैश फ्लोज हैं वो बढ़ जाते हैं, क्योंकि डिस्काउंटिंग जो आप कर रहे हैं रेट वो कम हो गया है, तो आपका जो डिनोमिनेटर है वो छोटा हो जाता है और न्यूमरेटर बढ़ जाता है, तो इसलिए आपका वैल्यूएशन भी ऊपर आ जाता है। तो एक और तरीके से आप जस्टिफाई कर सकते हैं कि फॉलिंग इंटरेस्ट रेट मार्केट में एमर्जिंग मार्केट्स बहुत बढ़िया हैं, वो दूसरा तरीका हो। तीसरा, आपने देखा होगा कि हमारा इंडिया, अभी आपने देखा होगा कि जो वेटेज है वर्ल्ड इंडाइसेस में बहुत ही बढ़िया हो गया हमारा। इनफैक्ट MSCI EM में मुझे याद है जब मैं कवर करना चालू किया था इंडिया को 2000, मतलब जब हम MSCI देखना चालू किया था 2000 की बात कर रहा हूँ, तब इंडिया का वेट कोई 3-4% हुआ करता था। फिर बाद में जून 2020 में जाके 8% वेट हुआ, और वो 4th लार्जेस्ट मार्केट था। हमारे से आगे था कोरिया, उसके आगे ताइवान, और उसके आगे चाइना। चाइना बहुत ही आगे था, 36% वेट था उनका। आज की तारीख में इंडिया का वेट है नंबर 2, 21 पॉइंट समथिंग, और चाइना 22 पे है। आप सोचिए कितना छलांगे मार के हम इतना आगे गए। तो दुनिया ने, जैसे मैंने बोला, आप सीधा डिस्काउंट कर रहे हैं इंडिया को। और MSCI वर्ल्ड इंडेक्स जहाँ पे US का वेट है 65%, 65%, वहाँ पे इंडिया इज़ द 4th लार्जेस्ट। बहुत कम वेट है वैसे, 2.4, बट जब मैंने करना चालू किया था तब 0.2 वेट हुआ करता था इंडिया का, मतलब 0.2 राउंड ऑफ करके 1.6 के आसपास कुछ होता, 0.16 होता था, और राउंड ऑफ करके 0.2 हो जाता था। और फिर बाद में जून 2021 में, जून इसलिए बोल रहा हूँ 2020 सॉरी, क्योंकि वहाँ से चेंज चालू हुआ इंडिया के लिए। 20 में 0.8 था, तो वहाँ से 3 गुना चल गया है वेट। तो जैसे मैंने बोला, हमारे को अपने आप को हमारा सोचना अलग करना पड़ेगा। हमारा मार्केट एक्सपेंसिव रहेगा क्योंकि हम अभी 3rd लार्जेस्ट इकोनॉमी होने वाले हैं, और ये इकोनॉमी जो इस पेस पे ग्रो होगी तो कोई दुनिया का जो इन्वेस्टर है वर्थ सॉल्ट वो इंडिया को अवॉइड नहीं कर सकता। ही हैज़ टू बी इन इंडिया। और आपने ये देख भी लिया था जब ये रिसेंट बजट में जब कैपिटल गेन्स टैक्स इंक्रीज़ किया था तो काफ़ी सेलिंग है FI की, लेकिन बाद में उन्होंने रियलाइज़ किया भैया और कोई बाजार ही नहीं हमारे पास लेने को जो इतना जो कैश फ्लो है वो एब्जॉर्ब कर सके, तो इसलिए वापस आ गए यहाँ पे। सो आई रेस्ट माई केस।
Okay, perfect, perfect. So Ganesh, then with that kind of liquidity, paise ke aage, everyone, when there is liquidity, everyone will bow to it. The liquidity that's coming in, the wider fundamentals that the market is faced with, and the way FI is looking at it, other institutions are looking, weightage and all that. How do people like this explain it to the average investor? How do we, it's very complicated. The jalebi is too much for the average person, and they are the ones who are investing big time today with their SIPs, with their reaching the markets. What should they be focusing when they communicate with them?
I think there's a couple of very clear messages that distributors should take to their clients at this point. Right? When markets are elevated, right, you always focus on good quality names. Right? अगर सब कुछ महंगा है तो आप सोना ही खरीदो. Right? So firstly, focus on good quality assets. I think that's point number one. Second, all of the upsurge that we have seen in the market has been driven by domestic funds so far, right? Predominantly domestically. Right? It's been SIP flows, LIC, EPFO, it's basically predominantly domestic funds. Now, as the rate cut cycle starts in the US, right, there is going to be increasing FII flows also coming to India, right? Like Dinshaw mentioned, the weightage of India is going to increase any which way. Right? Just given our faster growth rate, it will automatically grow. Right? अगर वो होने वाला है, if that is going to happen, where are the FIIs going to invest again? It is again predominantly going to be in the upper end of the market. Right? Now, what we have to be careful of is it is getting now to be almost like a dichotomous market. Right? There is one which is quality, which has probably not performed that well in the last few years, but is going to see a lot more flow, versus what a lot of people seem to want, which is more in the mid and the small cap, which has run up also quite a lot. As investors, you have to try to stay 2 steps ahead of the herd, right? How do you do that is by anticipating what is likely to happen, and these give you a few clues as to where you should be focusing your effort. So I think focus on quality, focus where you have good visibility into earnings of companies, and don't be misled by what is the flavor of the month. I think those are some messages I would leave with.
Venugopal, sectors that typically the B2B sectors could be are the opportunities. Logistics, India doesn't have enough, let's say, a cold chain that is good enough for the size of the economy that we're talking about. Or warehouses still building, and some of the opportunities emerging from, let's say, the way GST has emerged. How do they help their people they are advising to invest and focus on those markets rather than, chase something which we've traditionally called very expensive in the standard parlance of the markets?
Yeah, I think one or two things that need to be kept in mind while I think the growth is definitely there over the next 7 years, like I earlier mentioned. If our nominal GDP is growing at 10%, compounding at 10% in 7 years, we will double, so about 7 trillion. And you assume a market cap to GDP, so our market cap overall should go, beyond upwards of that. So by 2030, I think the markets would have gone up significantly in terms of size, in line with the economy and the growth that the economy is seeing. So I think that is something that is very clear. So the longer term picture clearly needs to be told to investors. We believe there are several drivers of growth, not just B2B, I think B2C as well. On the old economy side, you have the infrastructure and realty and manufacturing, which are big drivers of growth, two large pillars which are driving India's growth. So today, if you look at it, look at the markets or look at the economy, there are multiple drivers that are playing out. Unlike the past cycles, where you had 1 or 2 sectors or couple of themes which really did well. Today, you have multiple themes that are driving. Infrastructure, realty is one. There's a lot of government focus on that. Second is manufacturing. I think from 2019, we have seen the change in mindset from the government side to really take India forward in terms of overall contribution of manufacturing to GDP. That's likely to play out over the next several years with all of the incentives that are flowing through to the industries, and us taking market share in the global landscape. So that's, I think, another pillar of growth. Third is consumption. So, along with B2B, there is a B2C, which is likely to do extremely well. Consumption is something that we like, the discretionary consumption space. Given the fact that the per capita GDP is likely to grow from $2,700 or so to about $5,000 by 2030, we think discretionary consumption should do extremely well. And the fourth piece is financialization. I think we are all part of the same theme. It's clearly playing out. We believe this is a great opportunity to participate and create wealth, not just for investors, for all of us here. Also, it means a lot, given that with the growing investor base, with the opportunities that are unfolding in a growing economy, there is a lot of opportunities that are coming up for investing, and that can be taken, captured by all of you and the investors. The only point of caution or a little bit of further advice that I would ask all of you to give is to keep a focus on asset allocation, given all this, positivity around the economy and the markets. Don't let the allocations skew, significantly towards one side. Don't have a mismatch in terms of, risk profile, age profile, etc. When it comes to, what you advise investors, where to, put their money. I think those are things that, you should be careful while giving advice, is what I think.
You want to come in? Yeah, sure.
I think one of the important things in this kind of a market where, people, investors and, fund managers, everybody's concerned about rich valuations. I think it's important to, provide some perspective. So when so I absolutely agree that consumption, is a big story in India, but, few data that we come across and which, makes the picture clearer for the common man to understand is that when we talk about, and I think Ganesh mentioned about 2,500 USD being our per capita GDP. I think if you look at the cities like Bombay, Delhi and all, the per capita GDP is higher. So that's like about 7, which is comparable to what China has, right? And we are simultaneously talking about urbanization, premiumization. So that's exactly what's going to happen, right? So what I'm trying to say here, if you give them a perspective, then people will get convinced even more. So if you show them this kind of data that, so for example, I was talking about 25 years, 30 years. So if you show them that, okay, asset allocation is important, of course, but it is even more important that you stay put in your investment and think 25 years, right? So when we are talking about consumption, here's the perspective. You've seen life change in cities. This is what is happening, and this is how it's going to change, and leading to big opportunities for the country. And secondly, I think from a overall perspective, just to give some conviction, I think what is happening, and we were discussing this before, that in our market, we are seeing on an average, if you see the last maybe 11, 12 months, you see about $8 to $9 billion coming in the equity markets, and flows coming in the markets, and the money being raised is about 5-6 billion. So there's a gap, right? So obviously you are seeing these valuations go up. And the next thing that people are, and I'm sure our people on the fund management side would maybe can comment on it more, that today we are watching for the baton of capex being passed on from the government to the private sector. And this is one number which from 2003 to 2008 really changed the picture in India. So that's when the gross capital formation, which is matlab in simple words, bhai kitna paisa lag raha hai to increase the production capacity, infrastructure and all. So wo as part of GDP agar increase hota hai, which is in the range of say 27-30%, and when it goes up, right? So that's the phase which again Ganesh mentioned in the beginning, that translates into 3, 4, 5 times in terms of market movements. And so that's one of the triggers we believe as a house also, that if we track this number and we seem to be in place, because आप देखिए एक जगह में आपका there is appetite for investing in equity, which is this $8-9 billion coming in from various things, mutual fund, SIP, Baki, private equity, whatever they're gathering. And on the other side, there are promoters trying to raise money. And when will they put capex? When they're confident they can raise money, there is obviously opportunities. You know, the whole world is looking at India. The government is promoting manufacturing. India as a manufacturing hub. So everything seems to be in place. And if this number was to go up, again, there are no predictions कि भाई 2003 से जो 2008 में हुआ था होएगा, but I think that is something as a perspective that can give comfort to a lot of people or your investors. Yeah.
Since you raised this issue, I'd ask anyone who wants to come in, that the issue of the capital expenditure by companies and what is coming from banks, the kind of lending they're doing to corporates, that is a worry, that is a consistent worry that we're seeing. Anyone, so there is an informed investor, any of their clients, who ask this question, what perspective will help the person be convinced? I'm convinced about the larger story about you can't miss the India opportunity, but there will be the smaller questions will pop up. Anyone wants to come in on that?
So you're talking about the bank lending?
Yeah, bank lending. So corporate lending has been weak. Yeah. If you look at consumer lending, has been pretty strong.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Again, Hindi. Right? So हुआ क्या है कि our inflation, right? All central bankers were fighting that. लेकिन RBI के हमने 8% inflation पहले भी देखा हुआ था, right? तो RBI के पास कोई चारा नहीं था क्योंकि यूएस जिस हिसाब से रेट बढ़ा रहा था तो उनको भी अपने रेट बढ़ाने पड़े. अभी बढ़ा तो दिए, लेकिन अभी आप देखिए कि रियल इंटरेस्ट रेट आज की तारीख में कितने एक्सपैंड हो गए इंडिया में. नॉर्मली इंडिया हिस्टोरिकली मैं जब रियल इंटरेस्ट रेट की बात करता हूँ मीन्स इंटरेस्ट रेट लेस इन्फ्लेशन, राइट. तो रियल इंटरेस्ट रेट नॉर्मली हैज़ बीन अराउंड 1% इंडिया में, लेकिन इस बार 2.5 से 3% हो गया है क्योंकि आरबीआई को अपना रुपया संभालना है. हम एक इम्पोर्टिंग इकोनॉमी है, सो ऑब्वियसली रुपया का काफ़ी बड़ा इम्पैक्ट हो सकता था इन्फ्लेशन पे. तो जो पैरिटी मैनेज करनी थी वो आरबीआई को एक तो तरीका था कि आप अपने इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ाओ, बट वो भी किस हद तक बढ़ाएं, क्योंकि जैसे मैंने बोला रियल इंटरेस्ट रेट्स काफ़ी ब्लोट अप हो गए हैं. तो दूसरा तरीका था कि आप लिक्विडिटी सक आउट कर दीजिए, रुपये को रेयर कर दीजिए मार्केट में कि आप ज़्यादा ट्रेड ना कर सके रुपये में. तो वो लिक्विडिटी सक आउट करने की वजह से बैंकिंग सिस्टम पे इम्पैक्ट हुआ है. लेकिन आज की तारीख में आरबीआई के पास काफ़ी ब्रीदिंग स्पेस मिल गया है. अभी आप देखिए जैसे यूएस ने काटना चालू किया है, मेरे को लग रहा है कि पहला स्टेप जो आरबीआई करेगा विल बी रिलीज सम लिक्विडिटी इन द सिस्टम, बट दैट्स द ओनली वे. और इनफैक्ट मैं लास्ट वीक एक इंडस्ट्रीज को मिला था गुजरात में, तो उन्होंने मुझे बताया कि काफ़ी बड़े बड़े बैंकों की बात नाम लिए, मैंने नाम नहीं बताऊंगा क्योंकि आप समझ जाएंगे कि मेरे पास होल्डिंग भी है उनकी. तो तो वो बोले कि जब वो बैंक के पास गए, बोले कि मुझे लोन चाहिए, तो बोले देखिए हमारे पास अभी तो कुछ है नहीं देने को आपको, पर जैसे ही रिपो होता है आरबीआई का हम आपको लोन दे देंगे. तो आप सोचिए इतनी अभी तंगी है कैश की सिस्टम में एज एन बैंक के पास, क्योंकि उनके क्रेडिट डिपॉजिट रेशियो हैज़ गॉन अप quite a bit. मतलब ओवरऑल सिस्टम के रेशियो इज 84-85%, बट 80 इज समथिंग लाइक अ हेल्दी रेशियो. तो आई थिंक वो फाइट करने के लिए तो आपको लिक्विडिटी रिलीज देखनी पड़ेगी. दूसरा जो आपने बोला कि सेक्टर्स, एक्चुअली मैं थोड़ा यहाँ पे आपको एक हिस्टोरिकल पर्सपेक्टिव, मतलब इतिहास का पर्सपेक्टिव देना चाहूँगा. एक सेइंग है इंग्लिश में कि व्हाट यू लर्न फ्रॉम हिस्ट्री इज यू नेवर लर्न फ्रॉम हिस्ट्री बट हिस्ट्री रिपीट्स. तो आप अगर जो ऐसी इकनॉमीज देखेंगे जो $5 बिलियन क्रॉस किए हैं, और फॉर्चुनेटली हमारे लिए सिर्फ 2 ही हैं आज की तारीख में, जो यूएस और चाइना, तो आप उनका वो फेज़ देखेंगे जो इंडिया आज की तारीख में है. उस फेज़ में 2 सेक्टर जो थे वो बहुत ही बढ़िया किए थे. मैं मतलब यूएस में 70 से 80s की बात कर रहा हूँ, और चाइना में 2000 से 10s की बात कर रहा हूँ. जो वो 2 सेक्टर थे, एक तो सबने बोल दिया कंज्यूमर सेक्टर, क्योंकि कंजम्पशन से ही इकोनॉमीज बढ़ती हैं. केपेक्स से एक हद तक आप खींच सकते हैं. आपको याद होगा चाइना और इंडिया का जीडीपी सेम हुआ करता था 89 में. चाइना ओपनड अप मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के लिए 87 में, लेकिन 89 तक हमारा जीडीपी मोर लेस सिमिलर था, दे वर सेटिंग अप कैपेसिटीज़ वगैरह। पर 89 से लेके 2000 तक चाइना का जीडीपी डबल, मतलब हमारे से डबल हो गया, 4 गुना हो गया उनका खुद का, और हमारे से डबल हो गया। तो 1:2 का रेशो खुल गया था। और जैसे उसके बाद 2000 में उनका पर कैपिटा $2200-2300 हो गया, और उसके बाद कंजम्पशन किक इन हुआ वहाँ पे, और वो कंजम्पशन को लेके 2022 तक, मैं 2022 इसलिए बोल रहा हूँ कि पिछले 2 साल से चाइना कहीं नहीं गया, तो 2022 में पीक किया उन्होंने। तो 2022 में $19.5 ट्रिलियन की इकोनॉमी हो गई, और हम 3 ट्रिलियन पे घूम रहे थे। 1:6 का जो गैप है वो खोल दिया उन्होंने हमारे अगेंस्ट, प्योरली बिकॉज ऑफ कंजम्पशन। तो कंजम्पशन हैज़ टू किक इन। आज की तारीख में हुआ नहीं है, बट हमारे को ये लग रहा है कि इंडिया एक कस्प पे है वहाँ पे, कि जैसे उन्होंने बोला कि $2500 ऑलरेडी क्रॉस हो चुका है पर कैपिटा, तो ऑब्वियसली कंजम्पशन किक इन होगा। दूसरा जो सेक्टर है जो बहुत ही बढ़िया किया, इनफैक्ट कंजम्पशन से भी बढ़िया किया, वो था फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर, क्योंकि उनके लिए तो डबल वैमी होती है। आप सोचिए, एक तो केपेक्स जो आ रहे हैं आज की तारीख में, उनकी भी फंडिंग करनी पड़ेगी, और दूसरा जो कंजम्पशन है उसकी भी फंडिंग के लिए यही खड़े होते हैं करने को, क्योंकि मनी उतना ही रहता है, वेलोसिटी ऑफ मनी हैज़ टू इंक्रीज, और कंजम्पशन में वो वेलोसिटी ऑफ मनी इंक्रीज होता है। सो इसलिए हमें लग रहा है कि ये 2 सेक्टर तो नो ब्रेनर्स हैं यहाँ पे। सो आई विल स्टॉप।
Okay. Sure, please.
So I have 2 thoughts on this question. One is that in 2016 हमारे यहाँ demonetization हुआ, and then we had insolvency and bankruptcy code that was implemented in 17, and फिर उसके बाद हमने देखा बिजनेसमैन को कितना पनिश, आई मीन एक तो शेयर मार्केट में उनका भाव गिरा। सो जिस भी कंपनी के पास लोन था या ज़्यादा लोन था, और उस टाइम बहुत लोगों के पास बहुत ज़्यादा लोन होता था, the amount of punishment that businessmen got in India during that time meant that most businessmen ने कसम खा ली कि लोन नहीं रखूँगा। So between 2020 and 2024, आज हम जब किसी बिजनेसमैन से मिलते हैं तो everybody tells us that पहले डेट फ्री होना है, and fortunately share market has been doing well. Raising capital has been very easy, especially now. And hence we are seeing most companies becoming or deleveraging themselves even incrementally, which is why you see this credit from banking sector on corporate loan for the banking sector, especially the term loan part, has been declining for a long time. Having said this, you also made a point on capex, and I want to give you a data perspective is that people say that we've not seen capex, but actually last 3 years, which is FY 21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24, last 3 years, average annual capex for BSE 500 listed companies has been growing by 17 to 18% every year. And this is just the beginning. In fact, we think with the kind of energy transition capex that we are going to see now, which is especially linked with power sector, green hydrogen, and the related electronic manufacturing and all that we are seeing today, our view is that FY 25 will be a much larger number. I'll give you one more data point. And I started my career in 2009. When I look at data for banking sector sanction pipeline, corporate debt sanction pipeline between 2000 to 2024, on an average, sanction pipeline for banks, and पहले PSU banks ही होते थे largely, used to be between 1 to 3 lakh crore. 2006-7-8 में 3 lakh crore भी गया था. FY 24, which is the year that just went by, this sanction pipeline is already close to 6 lakh crore. This is the highest ever sanction pipeline that we have ever seen in our system. So short term, yes, there are these CD ratio issues, which is credit deposit ratio is higher. But I think demand for credit from corporate debt side is already moving significantly higher. And it is just about a time, my perspective, or at least we believe in Tata Mutual Fund that over the next 2-3 years, corporate credit will start growing at very healthy double-digit levels. FY 24 was the first year where corporate credit grew by 10% for the banking sector after a long gap. And we think that this will grow much higher, largely led by working capital to start with. But 2-3 saal baad, when corporates finish their limit of internal accruals, they'll start borrowing on term loans as well.
Okay. You wanted to come in, Ganesh, on that?
I just wanted to sort of say that with all this discussion, I think all the experts on the panel have talked a lot about consumption, right? I think that has given us a very good product idea going forward. Thank you for that.
Okay. Okay, so please get your questions ready because we'll come for that in a little while, please. Should we continue with this or do you want the questions right away? Okay.
Yeah, because that one's showing time's up, so we're very confused.
Oh, okay. So you can scan it on this. Oh, there. Okay, it'll come up here. If you can scan this and ask your question, maybe it'll. Okay, okay. Some of those pointers we've been seeing. So we continue that, Kanakji. Okay. So that product idea, obviously, you're not going to share. Okay. So, we also some of the new sectors that are coming up. I think we were just speaking about it, GCCs, defense manufacturing, while they are names, but that scale is just picking up. How should, they push that, or how should they help partake that opportunity for people they are speaking to? Okay, let him come and then I'll come to you.
Maybe I can chip in. Last 10-15 years आप देखेंगे markets में 10-15 साल के पहले there was only one hospital chain that was listed in the market, which was Apollo Hospitals. It had a hospital in Chennai, Hyderabad, and Indraprastha Apollo in Delhi. आज के तारीख में शायद 10 के ऊपर hospital chains listed हैं. इससे आपको पता चलता है कि हेल्थ केयर इंडस्ट्री का ग्रोथ बहुत हाई हुआ है एंड वैल्यू जनरेशन और वेल्थ जनरेशन उस इंडस्ट्री में काफ़ी हुआ है. ऐसा आप देखेंगे कंजम्पशन में भी बहुत सारे चेंजेस हुए हैं. एक एग्जांपल है क्विक सर्विस रेस्टोरेंट बिजनेस. 10 साल के पहले शायद देयर वाज ओनली वन कंपनी which was I think Jubilant Foodworks was there 10 years back. आज के तारीख में शायद 7-8 कंपनी उस स्पेस में लिस्टेड है. पिज़्ज़ा कंपनीज, बर्गर कंपनीज, देसी क्यूजिन कंपनीज एट्सेट्रा, और फूड डिलीवरी कंपनीज. इसका एक मीनिंग है कि इंक्रीजिंगली पीपल आर ईटिंग आउट, कंज्यूमिंग फूड फ्रॉम आउटसाइड. There is a food consumption behavioral change that is happening in front of us. Our underlying companies are growing faster. तो आप एक सेक्टर करके, whether it is health, banking and financial services देखेंगे. 10 साल के पहले वेल्थ मैनेजमेंट कंपनी करके कॉन्सेप्ट ही नहीं था. आज ऑलरेडी 2-3 कंपनीज लिस्ट हो गए हैं वेल्थ मैनेजमेंट कंपनीज एंड ग्रोन फास्टर. नॉन लेंडिंग फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस जैसे टेक्नोलॉजी बेस्ड कंपनीज है, स्टॉक एक्सचेंज है, डिपॉजिटरीज है, फिर रजिस्ट्रार एंड ट्रांसफर एजेंट्स लाइक कैम्स एंड केफिन्स, ऑल लिस्टेड. सो इफ़ यू ऑब्जर्व अराउंड द मार्केट, हम नए नए तरीके का कंपनीज, नया इंडस्ट्रीज का कंपनीज लिस्ट होते जा रहे हैं. एंड आई थिंक दीज आर द ट्रेंड्स दैट आर हैपनिंग इन फ्रंट ऑफ आवर आइज. शायद 5 साल के बाद you will have companies that are in new energy, higher, whatever, electric vehicle sectors, more and more. अभी तो एक company list हुआ है. You may probably see 5 companies getting listed in that space. So I think that is the way the trends are going to emerge.
Okay, okay. So because there are questions coming in, let's also get some of those questions. So Narendra Mohan Agrawal's question: in present situation, what should be the ideal equity and ratio? Oops. So we'll have to go back to that, please, if we can. Is there a way we can go back to that? Can we scroll up? It's covered here. Yeah, in the present situation, what should be the ideal equity and ratio advisable for 3 years time horizon?
Assume means equity and debt.
I would guess so, yeah.
So I think the best way is actually to put it to a vote in the group itself to see what is our balanced advantage fund, sort of allocations, right?
Yeah.
I think each
So
of us
why not?
shares
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
that actually gives you a good perspective. So for us, it's around 68% in equity and 32% in fixed income in our balanced advantage fund. It
Okay.
gives you a reasonable sense of
Yeah,
what our
1:2. Yeah. Venugopal.
We are at 50-50.
Okay, 50-50.
We are at 67, very close to that. But we don't do any debt, we do arbitrage, so no debt for us. By the way, I really am a believer in equity, so I'll rephrase that question. If equity is beaten any form of investment given a certain period of longer time, okay, so I'm a total equity believer.
Completely agree with you. I mean, long term, nothing better than equity. Would you like to?
I think I said 3 years. Again, it's contrary to what I earlier said. But yeah, we are also in our BAF running 70-30, 70 in favor of equity. I think fixed income also, if we all believe equity markets have to do well, interest rates have to be here or lower, right? So that's a big macro inefficiency जो आप जिसका फायदा उठा सकते हैं. Fixed income में होना भी जरूरी है. So 70-30 is our.
We are at 47-53. So naturally, on a 3-year perspective, our BAF tells us, or our model tells us that be slightly cautious.
Okay.
I said 50-50.
Yeah. Okay, there was one more question I thought on, if we can just scroll up a little bit. How much correction we can expect in percentage term in near future? My God. Again, should we do a poll?
I don't think even God knows that, by the way. So
Yeah.
भगवान को भी नहीं पता.
Okay, can we just scroll to the last question?
I will take that question.
Yeah.
इसके पहले the biggest bull run of the market happened between 2003 to 2007-8, whatever, that time. I think markets went up by some massive percentages. In that bull rally, we had 15% plus corrections 3 times within that larger bull rally. So corrections can be quite severe, even in a bull market, if you go by the past experience.
Yeah.
Don't get scared.
Okay, so Shrikanta Matrubai's question is expecting 12 to 14% CAGR, making me outdated, old-fashioned.
It's making you a realist. Right? Hey, because very honestly, if you look at GDP plus inflation, right? Today we are basically talking about growth of the economy at around 12%, right? Which is basically what earnings also is likely to be growing at. Stock prices are a slave to earnings, right? So in the long term, 12 to 14%, whatever you are suggesting to your investors is absolutely the right thing. Right? What people have seen though, in the last 2-3 years, has been a very different reality. Right? On their back, and you should pat yourself on your back as well for having delivered that for them. But that is not something that is a healthy sign also necessarily for the future, right? But when that loose ball comes, don't let that person be using that in F&O trading, right? Make sure that the person is invested in equities.
Yeah, and since there was a mention of 25 years, you know what's that magical number again with a cricket analogy? Sachin Tendulkar played for 24 years and 1 day into his 25th year. So you can have the potential to be a Sachin Tendulkar as well. 15 November 89 to 16 November 2013. 1 day into his 25th year as well. Okay, there was one more question I thought about finfluencers. There was one question about finfluencers and I thought, okay. So finfluencers, how do you handle, how does the market, how do the people who they speak to, what should be there? Should they believe them or the finfluencer saying, देखिए इसमें आपके पैसे गंवा सकते हैं आप, something of that sort. Any take on that?
They should put their money where the mouth is. So I would say that listen to the fund managers. Not really. I mean, basically, influencers maybe there's a segment. काफी नाम जरा खराब हुआ था बीच में क्योंकि काफी लोग इंक्वायरी वगैरह हुई, सेबी ने कुछ एक्शन लिए थे, पर जो ढंग के हैं वो भी काफ़ी अच्छी बातें करते हैं, और हमारे लिए भी अच्छा है क्योंकि हम भी उनके साथ मीटिंग करते हैं तो हम रियलाइज़ करते हैं कि हाँ काफ़ी सब्सटेंस है इनमें। तो ये सिलेक्टिवली आपको सुनना पड़ेगा, लेकिन दूसरा जो एक्चुअल मनी मैनेज करता है वही समझता है कि क्या हो रहा है क्या नहीं हो रहा। वो भी एक्चुअली आप किसी इन्फ्लुएंसर पूछिए तो वो भी बोलता है मेरे को भी यही गाइड करते हैं, मतलब इनसे ही मैं समझता हूँ कि क्या हो रहा है क्या नहीं हो रहा, और उसके हिसाब से ही व्यू पॉइंट बनता है यहाँ पे। तो इट्स अ मिक्स एंड मैच, आपके ऊपर डिसाइड होता है क्या करना है, लेकिन आइडियली लीव इट टू यू गाइस।
No, I have a strong view on this.
Sure, please.
There is a difference between practitioners and theoreticians. Fund managers sitting on either side of me are practitioners. They manage money and thousands of crores of people money. It's a fiduciary responsibility, heavily regulated, super watched, under watchful eye of regulator. And in that, they take care of people's money. And there is a lot of respect and value that it deserves. Influencers are not where people are managing people's money. I am not, we have skin in the game. खुद का पैसा funds में है.
And not small money.
Not small money. Either. Companies का पैसा भी है. The AMCs also have to put money in their own funds, right? So we are all aligned. So we may not be flamboyant. अच्छे बात नहीं करेंगे, YouTube में नहीं आएंगे, reels नहीं बनाएंगे, लेकिन काम करेंगे, डिलीवर करेंगे।
और कभी कभी पेपर भी नहीं पढ़ेंगे, कभी कभी पेपर भी नहीं पढ़ेंगे।
I think this new cult of giving advice on social media and not having recourse should be eradicated, or should be dealt with it the respect it deserves. The rest of us are doing serious work. You are convincing people to invest money, and we are trying to manage that money well and compete with each other and try to deliver better. So this is a real value chain. That is the imaginary value chain. Don't go into the imaginary world. Let us be rooted in the real world.
It's a very valid point, and before I come to you, Mohit, just one point. And because I've worked in the media for very long on television and now in print as well, and earlier print before television, I can tell you one thing, and this is my learning. Convincing some people to put their money with your conviction is not easy. So I completely get your point, Mohit.
Yeah, so I think interesting, and you come from the media, so I think you can throw a lot of light on this. But I believe that over-regulation may not be required, but I think what our advisors need to see is कि एक अगर हम कहते हैं wealth creation long term है, तो क्या वो कुछ long term की बात कर रहा है? दूसरा, I think it's important to know the other side, right? And that's how you can judge the merit of a good product. तो अगर आपको पूरा risk return trade-off उसमें पता चल रहा है, I think to me, there should be some regulation around it, but what it should address is कि, I mean, हर area में influencers होते हैं, right? From gadgets to, real estate to insurance, so why not in this area? It's not a problem. So you will have to listen sometimes, and that's one of the problems we face. We have 1.4 billion people, so that's 1.4 billion journalists actually in the WhatsApp Academy. So we'll have to deal with it. But उसमें एक ही चीज़ है, मतलब कि आप सुनो सबकी पर करो मन की, right? That's really important. But to me, over-regulation will not help. But I mean, all of you are veterans here, so being able to filter that information, what is relevant, what is not. So to me, being dogmatic will not help. Having an open mind is actually, to me, the biggest thing that you should be doing right now. But given your experience, you should be able to filter out that information. What is really long-term oriented, what is really adding to the advisor alpha, and what is not, right? So that's what I wanted to say.
Very well. Yeah, please.
Can I just add one point to that? See, I think, let me come at it from the distributor's angle as well, right? Because I think the angst that I hear from this question is really around, I'm doing all the hard work. Somebody puts up a YouTube video saying how I'll make you retire at 40, or I'll make you a millionaire by X time, right? Without even understanding anything, and they get a lot of views, and probably people will even get tempted to invest, right? Now, what we can do or what our distributor partners can do is really focus on, again, the basics, right? Go to your investors, tell them what is the market going to give you, right? What is your asset allocation? What is your goal? What is your time horizon, right? Show them data, right? And show them what is a realistic plan, right? If after that people still want to get swayed by a dream and a promise, then good luck to them. Stick with those that are willing to stay the course, because the journey that we are asking people to go on is one which requires persistence. Like we said, it's a marathon. It is not, you do not want people who are coming here saying, I'm going to make money only in the next 3 months and then I'm happy, right? You want a certain set of investors to stick with this industry and with you as a distributor as well. So focus on doing the basics right.
It's a fantastic point that you've made. And it just reminds me of something that a lot of people here, how many of you have heard data is the new oil? Okay, some people have heard it. Let me make it better. And this is something I heard from someone. Data is the new soil on which everything grows. And that's, if I may say so, is the sum and substance of what you're saying. There's also another question from Ajmal on, he wants views on theme-based investments. Something we were talking about of emerging opportunities. Anyone would like to? Yes,
So
sure.
basically, we have, by the way, we believe in something called as elimination investing. Our philosophy is elimination investing, and that one of the factors for elimination is theme. क्योंकि थीम आपको चाहिए, क्योंकि आपको मल्टी ईयर टेलविंड चाहिए होती हैं, और ये थीम एक्चुअली इंडिया में बड़ी सारी अच्छी थीम है. तो इसलिए जैसे फाइनेंशियलाइजेशन किसी ने बोला था, कंजम्पशन थीम हो गई, फिर फैक्टर कॉस्ट एडवांटेज थीम हो गई, डिफेंस थीम, इंफ्रा थीम, बड़ी सारी थीम है. तो थीम से क्या होता है कि आपको एक कंफर्ट मिलता है कि यहाँ पे मैंने एक ढूंढा है जैसे स्टॉक या सेक्टर और व्हाटएवर, जहाँ पे एक मल्टी ईयर टेलविंड है उसके साथ, फॉर नॉट ओनली दैट स्टॉक टू ग्रो with the earnings growth, right? But also to re-rate along the way, as in when the consistency of earnings growth kicks in. ये re-rating ही होती है जो आपको kicker देती है आपके returns में. नहीं तो जैसे इन्होंने बोला कि markets are slaves to earnings growth, तो 12-13% आपको growth दिख गई तो 12-13% आपको compounding रहेगी, लेकिन जैसे ही re-rating होती है kicker मिलता है. इसीलिए आपको 10 साल में आपको 100 बैगर मिल सकता है, वैसे नहीं मिल सकता है अदरवाइज. री-रेटिंग की जरूरत है. तो इसलिए थीम बेस्ड इन्वेस्टिंग काफ़ी इंपॉर्टेंट होती है. पर दूसरा आपको ये ध्यान रखना पड़ेगा कि ये डायनामिक्स कैसी है थीम की. जैसे मेटल्स बहुत ही बढ़िया थीम है इंडिया के लिए, राइट? क्योंकि जीडीपी ग्रो होने वाला है, तो काफ़ी केपेक्स होगा, काफ़ी एक्सपेंडिचर होगा, काफ़ी इंफ्रा स्पेंड्स होंगे, तो उसके लिए मेटल बहुत ज़रूरी रहता है. लेकिन मेटल का प्रॉब्लम है वो सिक्लिकल है इन नेचर. तो आपको बॉटम में लेके टॉप में बेचना पड़ेगा. और सिक्लिकल किस लिए है? क्योंकि जैसे ही डिमांड पिकअप होता है, कोई ना कोई मैन्युफैक्चरर अपनी कैपेसिटी स्टेप अप कर देता है, या चाइना अपना मॉथबॉल कैपेसिटी वापस ऑपरेशन में ले आता है और प्राइस करेक्शन आ जाता है. तो इसलिए आपको टाइमिंग करना पड़ता है. ये शायद ही भगवान ही कर सके, इंसान तो कर नहीं सकता. इसलिए ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट फैक्टर है आपके लिए थीम बेस्ड इन्वेस्टिंग.
Sure.
I'll just add to that. I think themes are important, and India has several themes which I mentioned earlier, multiple themes that are playing out today. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is that, you know, when you are playing a theme, there is a high correlation between the sectors and stocks that you have in the portfolio, which means your beta is really high, and which means that the volatility can be significantly higher than a, you know, diversified multi-cap, flexi-cap kind of portfolio. So keep in mind the risk-return profile, give it to those investors who understand and believe in that theme and who want to participate in it and accept the volatility that is part of that, part of any theme. The other thing is that many of these themes have different time horizons. For example, consumption, we believe, is a multi-year theme. I mean, it could be a multi-decade theme for India. So, you know, you need to be patient, you need to remain invested for long periods of time to really get the full fruits of that investment. And there could be real multi-baggers within discretionary consumption over the next 5-7 years or 10 years. So I think that's also an important aspect of theme-based investing. Everything is not the same. Don't look at it on a 1-year, 2-year basis. Don't look at the risk return. Look at it differently compared to, or in relation to the rest of the market and rest of the schemes.
Rahul Dravid again, not such Viren Sehwag, I guess. We are very close to Viren Sehwag's area, but still I think Rahul Dravid rules. There's another question. We always believe that when markets go down, then we should invest more. Then why most of the AMC comes up with the NFO during the bull market? Who'd like to take that?
So,
Okay.
I'll
Both of
just
you.
give a light answer to it, and then the heavy answer will come there. So when I was in a career of investing, one of my friends used to say, fundamentals don't work in bear market, and it doesn't matter in bull market. Or you can say it as valuations also. Valuations don't work in bear market, and valuations don't matter in a bull market, karke he used to say. So why it happened was we launched a mid-cap fund at the bottom of the market called, in my current firm, Sundaram Select Mid-Cap. Single-digit PEs, all the companies. We collected a princely sum of 17 crores in that NFO in 2002. Today the NAV is 1300 plus 10 rupees wala NAV. Fund is about 10, 11, 12,000 crore. The best times to invest are the worst times to float a NFO and vice versa, and that is the sad truth of our industry. And unfortunately, we are in this race of asset gathering, and that is leading to lots and lots of NFOs. Real investments cannot be made on the basis of that. We as fund managers, money managers have to be very, very careful when we are taking large quantum of money at these kind of things, and very well knowing the risks as well. Now on to the more serious question.
So you've asked him to do the tougher part of the job, I guess.
First of all, I wanted to say that I had very similar thoughts because I launched a small cap fund in 2018. Worst time to start a small cap fund, and we got only 189 crore at that time. Today, obviously, NAV is up 4-5 times and fund size is 9,000 crore plus. So as he was giving an example of mid cap, I'm giving an example of small cap. Nobody invests in bad times so much when we were shouting through the roof that abhi daliye. But having said this, I'll give you a different perspective or different point of view, is that our regulator, SEBI, has done an amazing job of standardizing schemes in mutual funds. So much so that today, scope to launch new schemes have gone down drastically in active fund management, in most funds. So you would observe that most mutual funds today, if they are launching new schemes, they are in passive investments. Active funds are very seldom to come by from old AMCs. So I would flip that question around and say that actually बहुत कम launch हो रहे हैं. These are very, very few launches that are happening, and even if somebody is launching it, these are all largely passive funds that are being launched. Active funds are far and few.
Okay, one or two more questions, and then we carry on with our conversation. So there's one question. Okay, can we just scroll down? No, the other way, please. Please, the other way. Up, sorry, I said it wrong. If we can go up further. नहीं, इधर नहीं. आ गया. No, we are going to the older questions. I want the newer questions coming up, please. माइक ले लीजिए अगर तो अच्छा चलिए ऐसे बोलिए जी जी
सर मैंने अभी आपको बोला है इक्विटी इतना बढ़िया करती है, आप कहाँ सिल्वर गोल्ड अभी लास्ट 10 साल में हमारा बाजार $1.5 ट्रिलियन का $5 ट्रिलियन हो गया है. इक्विटी मार्केट की बात कर रहा हूँ मैं. गोल्ड 67% बढ़ा है, ये मेरे पास डेटा है इसलिए मैं आपको रील ऑफ कर सकता हूँ। सिल्वर 114% बढ़ा है। तो आप कहाँ आप ये सब एक ग्रोइंग इकोनॉमी में, ठीक है आप यूएस में होते तो शायद मैं बोल देता हाँ देख लो भैया कमोड, आपकी इकोनॉमी इतनी बढ़िया ग्रो होने वाली है, 14-15% कहीं नहीं गया आपका अर्निंग्स ग्रोथ हमारे बाजार में, क्योंकि जैसे इन्होंने बोला कि नॉमिनल जीडीपी ग्रोथ 10.5-11% होने वाला है, ठीक है। अभी जीडीपी में एक कंपोनेंट होता है एग्रीकल्चर, जो फॉर्चुनेटली हमारे इंडेक्स में नहीं है, हमारे इंडेक्स में सिर्फ इंडस्ट्री सर्विसेज वगैरह ये सब है, ठीक है। तो आपका ये जो एग्रीकल्चर जो 4-5% ग्रोथ है अच्छे टाइम में, वो आपको पुल डाउन नहीं करता, तो अर्निंग ग्रोथ जो होगी इंडस्ट्री और सर्विसेज की 14-15% के आसपास होगी। अभी आप किसी अल्फा मैनेजर के पास चले जाएं तो ऑब्वियसली वो थोड़ा अल्फा आपको बना के ही देगा। तो आप ये कंपाउंड कीजिए, कोई आपको कमोडिटी एक छोटे स्पेस में शायद आपको रिटर्न अच्छा दे दे, पर गिवन अ लॉन्गर पीरियड ऑफ टाइम कभी आपको इक्विटी से बढ़िया रिटर्न कोई भी एसेट क्लास में नहीं मिल सकता।
It's
I just wanted to, sorry.
sure, no. So that's
I just want to add, while I am also a very big believer in equity like Dinshaw is, I think एक हमने start किया था principle से कि asset allocation is important. So from that perspective, I think my belief is if I were to be looking at my own portfolio and what I see is important is कि 10 से 20% अगर आप कुछ हट के रखते हैं, I think that is something that could help in times where you are seeing this volatility in the market. So to me 5-10% in ETFs which are deriving value from these commodities. Similarly I think हम लोग इनमें से दोनों हमारे कंपनी में नहीं है by the way, but I'm saying कि for example geographical diversification is something that also is important. And again this is not to say कि India बहुत अच्छा नहीं करेगी, it will obviously like I said हम तो 25 साल का सोच रहे हैं, but 15-20% something which diversifies your portfolio, which is not really linked to your domestic bias, to me I think is important when you're advising clients in long-term wealth creation. From a behavioral perspective, I'm saying कि जब वो आपसे पूछते हैं कि ये 2-3 साल यार कोई रिटर्न नहीं आया और वो होगा, right, moderation of returns होगा, हमने सबने बात की है, तो उस time there are these diversifiers which may help, and to me a little bit is important.
okay. There's a question. The name's not mentioned. How do you see emerging technologies like AI, blockchain, renewable energy influencing long-term investment strategies? I'll just broaden this question a little bit. Technology is a key differentiator for many industries today. How does one of their clients, one of the investors that they speak to, how do they become part of that increasingly? Is there some kind of fear of over-reliance on some of these, Ganesh?
So let me actually expand that a little bit further, Ashutosh, right? So there is one thing which is about how your investors participate, and obviously there are various ways in which you can do that. But there is also how do you participate more effectively in this technology opportunity, right? So how do you use technology tools to be able to expand your own business? How do you use technology tools to be able to do your business more efficiently? How do you use technology tools to do your business wherever you want, at whatever time you want, right? All of these are things that I think in our industry itself, let us start from here, right? These are things that we must all focus on. How do we bring these tools and improve the productivity and efficiency in our own industry, right? Once we see different tools that are being brought into the market at this point of time, right? Day-to-day technologies and let's say new age technologies like AI, blockchain, etc. All of these will fundamentally change the way we do business, right? But let's start with day-to-day technologies, right? That itself, there is a huge gap. Now, going to next-gen technologies, right? India is very well positioned in many of these sectors, right? But for us to make that transition, there is going to have to be a lot of skilling as well that has to be done. For investors, I think it is a very simple mantra that people really need to have. They just need to focus on the key players that are already in the Indian technology sector have a significant gap compared to global players. They will continue to get stronger. Invest in those. Right? That's a very simple message that I would leave.
No, technology का 2-3 तरीके का use है. One is reducing the friction between the interfaces like we have with distributors, distributors have with investors, and there is a lot of physical transactions used to happen, so there is a digitization is happening. We are finding out easier way of interacting with each other. Oh, that is very important, and there we have to use more and more of this thing. Reduction of friction, उसको बोलते हैं. दूसरा है कि to make it more efficient, just like can we write smarter emails to our clients? Can we make it simpler emails, simpler communication? There people are already started using AI. पर एक complex point है, उसको किस तरीके से break down करें, कितना simplify position करते हैं. तीसरा है productivity tools, how to use Excel better, how to use your various other financial apps that are available better. And that is a separate educational program which many of I have seen trainers in this group itself run those programs, etc. So there are multiple ways. AI is the, what is it called, food chain में बहुत high है. उधर straight away जाने का ज़रूरत नहीं है. At the lower end of food chain में भी काफ़ी tools है, which I think we should be using more and more aggressively.
Yeah, so I think there are two ways to really look at technology, machine learning and AI, and we talk about two types of AI, right? One is artificial intelligence, but I think the other part, which is augmented intelligence, is something where it's not about technology adoption is inevitable. I think हम लोग हर day-to-day life में कर रहे हैं, but we don't realize it. So like I think Ganesh pointed out, we are also trying to use, it's not just the user interface that you're trying to adopt technology to. I think it helps increase for the investment team the funnel of companies that they can look at, right? At the back end, Anand pointed out, writing smarter emails and all. But in all this, like I think, to me, a good model that can emerge, and especially because distributors are sitting here, is an O2O model, which means offline advice and online transaction. I think that is what really works, because somewhere the illusion of control is what the investor wants. So when he'll like to take advice from you. And just as a stat, by the way, about 65 to 70% new additions to the mutual fund investment ecosystem has happened through B2C portals, right? But that is again helping a lot of the seasoned advisors, because whenever the portfolio size grows, it's very natural that they come to all of you. So to me, I think it's technique which is going to be controlling technology rather than technology controlling the technique, because if that was the case, then we'll not have advisors, we'll have robos and robocops sitting here, right? So to me, I think we should not be afraid of that. Adoption of technology to be used as augmented technology, I think is the way forward, and I'm sure that's really going to help business for everyone.
So in my organization, we're utilizing AI, by the way, let me be frank about this, and not only for operational reasons, we're also using it for identifying newer ideas. Like I have an analyst who's dedicated towards this. In fact, only yesterday he came and told me he ran 36,000 of his emails across through an LLM, which is, I won't give you the name of the LLM, large language module, that is an AI, generative AI module. And he said he came up with these companies where the trends are changing. I mean, as in the AI ran through those 35,000 emails, 36,000 emails in like a couple of minutes and gave him a synopsis of these are the companies where you can see a pickup happening in terms of ratings, in terms of the language of the analyst and stuff like that. So that was very exciting. I mean, in fact, obviously, we won't depend solely on that. Further work will be done on all these ideas that are coming up. But that, I think, is a very different way of looking at AI in terms of investments. Obviously, AI will never be able to replace a fund manager, okay? You need that human touch. You need that human touch to decide, or basically AI doesn't have a gut. A fund manager has a gut, and that gut is his years of experience, which tells him that, look, should I be going ahead with this idea? Looks, everything is fine, but ultimately he has to decide. So I don't think that's going to happen, but obviously it's going to aid a lot of analysts in identifying newer ideas. Sorry, I had to say that in English. So.
नहीं हिंदी में भी बता सकते हैं, लेकिन आप में से कितने लोग ऐसे AI टूल्स का इस्तेमाल करते हैं? Would you like to raise your hands? Sorry? Okay, Chat GPT. But let's say for communicating with your audience, with your investors, how many of you use tools like that? Okay, so that tells you something. Possibly there is an opportunity to raise the bar for the industry. And I had one question on the bigger picture. So much of talk of China. I mean, we've not even used the word once. कुछ बदल रहा है क्या? क्योंकि Chinese markets are at a low, multi-year low, and you have the supply chains moving out. That's what we are led to believe. So what is changing? Dinshaw, you'd like to start?
So पहली चीज़ तो जो चाइना ने किया था पिछले 20 साल में वो हम नहीं कर सकते. Let's be very clear. सपने देख सकते हैं लेकिन वो नहीं रिपीट होगा क्योंकि जो चाइना का मैन्युफैक्चरिंग आउटसोर्सिंग था एक परफेक्ट टाइम पे था. आज की तारीख में वर्ल्ड, उस समय वर्ल्ड श्रिंक हो रहा था, अभी वर्ल्ड श्रिंक नहीं हो रहा है. वर्ल्ड को चाहिए जैसे नियर शोरिंग चाहिए, ऑन शोरिंग चाहिए ऑफ क्रिटिकल टेक्नोलॉजीज एंड क्रिटिकल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग प्रोसेसेस. वो आउटसोर्स नहीं हो रहा है. तो इसलिए आउटसोर्सिंग की गेम आई थिंक इंडिया हैज मिस द बस. ओके, हमें मिलेगा आउटसोर्सिंग बट या सर्विसेज तो रहे ही हम, लेकिन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में भी लो मार्जिन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग वगैरह मिलेगा. लेकिन जैसे मैं सबको यही बोलता हूँ कि इंडिया का PLI स्कीम, प्रोडक्शन लिंक इंसेंटिव स्कीम $25 बिलियन का यूएस ने जो लास्ट बजट किया था $800 बिलियन का उनका PLI था. और वो PLI था फोटोवोल्टिक सेल्स में, कार बैटरीज में, ग्रीन एनर्जी में. सो यू कैन कम्पीट विद देम. आई मीन वो उनको चाहिए कि वहाँ पे ही उनका मैन्युफैक्चरिंग रहे, ये सब क्रिटिकल टेक्नोलॉजीज़ का. सो वो नहीं होगा. दूसरा आई थिंक जो सबके जहन में एक सवाल आता है कि अभी चाइना ने जो इंसेंटिव्स अनाउंस किए हैं वो कहाँ हद तक इंडिया को हिट कर सकते हैं. मुझे नहीं लगता कि कुछ होने वाला है यहाँ पे, क्योंकि प्रॉब्लम चाइना का एक्चुअली कंज्यूमर कॉन्फिडेंस का है, चीपर मनी का नहीं है. उसके पास पैसे ही नहीं है, उसके पास कंफर्ट ही नहीं है कि आगे जाके वो खर्चा करे. तो जब तक ये अभी जो किया वो फिस्कल किया था, पर जब तक ये मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी चेंज नहीं होती वहाँ पे, मतलब पैसा ही फेंक, जैसे बेन बर्नर्की बोलता था कि हेलीकॉप्टर से आप नोट फेंकेंगे तो सब आपकी इकोनॉमी चलती रहेगी. वही ज़रूरत है चाइना में, अदरवाइज वो नहीं हो सकता यहाँ पे. सो दैट
Yeah, I think China is a country which has done extremely well for a long period of time. They've created so much excess capacity in the system for the world, and it's now getting difficult to utilize all of that capacity given that there is competition from outside, including India in multiple sectors. I disagree to some extent with what Dinshaw mentioned in terms of manufacturing. I think India is gaining in some pockets, especially in industrial goods, in electronics, in pharmaceutical ingredients. I think in multiple pockets, India is gaining, a little bit market share across the world. Some of it is coming from China, some of it is incremental from outside as well. But I think the bigger problem with China is the aging population. Their own consumption has dropped, and the capacities that they have, it's going to take a lot of time for that to get utilized or to reach a fair or optimum level of utilization. And that is where the issue is. So my sense is that they will continue to drift lower, or will give these tactical up moves time and again, but it's extremely difficult to get come back to a strong growth path like they had in the past several years. They were the best performing economy for a long period of time. I think the stage is set for India to really take that, and we've already done that at least in the last few years.
So the issue with China, and this is the difference with India, is you cannot trust the data coming from China, right? It's actually a big problem. Today, China is having a property crisis. It is snowballing into a banking crisis. There is an off-balance sheet lending crisis, and nobody knows the depth of it, right? This cannot happen in a country like India. So that is a very fundamental difference between the two places. Also, China is a very centralized, driven economy versus India, where 1,000 points of light can flourish, right? So we are talking about two very different market environments. The the only thing that you can really conclude on China is based on how it is behaving, right? And over the last 2 years, we have seen increasingly stepped up gold purchases by the central bank as well as households in China. What that normally indicates is fear in the economy, right? Now, at some point, fear gets overdone, and that gives you an opportunity, right? Are we there yet? With the existing data, it is very, very hard to say, right? So I would reserve judgment on this at this point of time. I think the recent policy stimulus that has come in is interesting, but I don't know if it is too early or is it sufficient.
Anyone on China? Sorry.
Maybe-
Yeah. Please.
Maybe I'll add, the fundamental problem of China versus the other thing is the way the corporates are organized and the government's role on the organization of corporates. Economic growth translating to business opportunities, translating to profits and to share market is a very complex process. Only few economies in the world have cracked this. US is the prime most cracker, many markets in Europe. India, luckily, fortunately, the government has vacated many industries and don't interfere in it, and businessmen operate in that space with profit as a prime motive. And that is what makes stock markets interesting. We have seen time and again in China, government coming and intervening in businesses, curtailing them. And there we know what happened to Alibaba, CEO, etc. So you don't know who actually owns the business, who is responsible for it. And because of that, the stock market is trading there at 10 PE. The valuation is 10. Because global investors have lost their confidence in that. But they're heavily invested there. At every raise, they will pull it out because of this fundamental problem the market has. It is not a market-driven economy. It is a state-driven market economy. And if you are a very serious investor, you will have trouble understanding the companies and making money out of them. Of course, at 30,000 feet, you may still make money in that market. You can trade in it, you can make money on it. But if you're a very, very serious investor, I would say you have to look at companies which are better governed, with less interference from the government, run on business economics that you understand. And then you're putting your money on them. So you've got to be really careful.
Chandraprakash?
Yeah. So just 2 points. One is, I want to share one example that I interacted with one of the Japanese multinational company very recently, which global chairman was here. And he was narrating his experience in China. And he told us that when they started their business in China, they realized that Chinese government, for all the Chinese companies present in China in their as competition, the government used to give as much as 8% of sales as subsidy to all the Chinese companies to compete with the Japanese major. They chose to become more and more efficient every year. And there came a time in 10 years when the government realized that you can't continue to give subsidy and that to as much. And the moment that subsidy stopped, that particular Japanese company became the largest manufacturer of that product in China. And even today, that is the largest, and by the way, that's the largest company for that product in the world today. So there is a lesson for all of us, or our companies, is that you need to become as efficient as you can. I see it happening in India in, for example, select auto ancillary products, for example. Some companies in Gurgaon, for example, I've visited some facilities, and I think we are already there, in some segments at least. So that's one point that I wanted to make. The second thought that I can, and this is probably from a market perspective I want to highlight, it's a very short-term view though, is that between 2020 and 2024, most Asian economies, including China, had very weak economic environment, so earning growth was struggling. We were doing very well. So naturally, foreign investors exited China, in the process also exited India because they had invested through emerging market indices in all Asian economies. Having said this, when I look at Bloomberg consensus for India estimates and China estimates and other Asian economies estimates for the next 2-3 years, it tells you a story. For the next 3 years, India earning growth is likely to be between 13 to 15% CAGR. China is also likely to be between 14 to 15% CAGR. Barring Indonesia, most economies in the Asia, as per Bloomberg consensus, earning growth is likely to be between 14 to 15% CAGR. We traded 21 times 1 year forward. They traded 14 to 15 times 1 year forward. ROE differences are there. Return on equity profile for us is far higher at 16%. But if Bloomberg consensus earning estimate for other Asian economies is right, their ROEs will also move toward 14 to closer to 12 to 14% in that band. So I sometimes wonder that in the short term, will money move more to Asia than India? Or it's a point that we all need to see. But I am in that sense saying that there is this arbitrage for foreign investors, maybe, not us. We are only going to invest in India. We anyways like the long-term story. But that's something that we need to all think about.
Okay, very interesting point. Sir, you had a question, please.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sir, the majority view is coming that we need to focus on consumption-based infrastructure, etc. But if you look at the total consumption-based industry, what will be the market cap to the total market cap of India? So is it significant? That is question number one. And second is, from an MFD approach perspective, the majority, 88% feel that we need to focus on behavioral part, which is including risk management. But portfolio management may be coming only just 4%. Will we be able to, as an MFD, will we be able to create an alpha 2, that is GDP plus inflation, which is whatever 14% kind of return? So is it possible? The last question is basically, while India has the greatest story, right now the US dollar is 84 and projected, because the 5-year long-term view is it will be 98, and FCNR is with 6% plus 4% rupee depreciation is giving in a sort of a guaranteed return for FCNR. Means NRI to come and invest in India. So if you can share some expert view on these, it will help. Thank you.
So that's exactly my, yeah. So sir, so you had at least 3 questions. This is like India opportunities, so many opportunities.
Let me maybe take on the second
Sure,
question,
sure.
which was around the distributors. How can they generate alpha, right? And it's actually something I'd written an article about some time back. There's a study done by Morningstar, right, which actually shows the returns that have been made in the fund versus what have been made in the folios that have invested in that fund, right? Across all fund types, whether it is flexi, large, mid, small, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, any kind of horizon, there is a gap of between 2.5% to 5% annualized between fund returns and what the investor makes, right? Why does that happen? That actually happens because the investor is trading in and out at the wrong times. He's chasing the wrong things, right? Now, we talk about fund manager alpha, that's probably a few basis points, right? But 250 to 500 basis points is actually sitting in your hands, in this room, for 1 lakh crores, right? Think about the value that you all bring. If this was a company, you would be generating annual profits of about 5,000 crores, all of you in this room, right?
So Sachin Tendulkars are here.
Exactly.
So that, certainly you deserve the clap for that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to add this perspective that in terms of my suggestion, and of course you are practitioners, we've been on the other side. I've mostly been on the manufacturing side, which means the mutual funds. So you are in touch with the clients. But I think there are these 4 factors, and to me, controlling the controllable is going to be important. So what we look at basically कि on the portfolio, आपका जो allocation है, fund selection है, timing है और behavioral part, इसमें let's look at controllable क्या है. तो सबसे बड़ा controllable जैसे हम लोग सब discuss कर रहे थे is the behavioral part. Or it's going to be a tough journey, but that is where you can. So in the descending order, I think behavioral part. Second being asset allocation, because that's a journey. You've got data for n number of years today. And while, past performance may not be an indicator of the future, but it gives you a good guide the way money is managed. So asset allocation is the second part in that descending order. Third being fund selection. I think there is a lot of work to be done there by advisors like yourself. I'll just give you this thought that if you look at, say, a difference between the best performing large caps versus, so this is the easier category where you'll think differences will not exist. But over the last 5 years, the differences between the best and the worst could be about 4-5%. In the small cap category, where the risk becomes higher, the differences on CAGR may be anywhere from 14 to 15 or 16%, right? So imagine over 5, 7, 10 years, this could translate. So again, this becomes easy on hindsight. आप बोलेंगे अभी पीछे से तो आप बता रहे हो कि भाई ऐसे है, but that's the exercise. So in order of descending order, third in order is fund selection, where I think a regular review, talking to fund managers, trying to understand the style of the fund manager and also what suits your clients, right? Some people are prepared for an aggressive upside and an equally bad, downside. For them, maybe an aggressive style is okay. So fund selection, and lastly, timing, right? So we've all talked about कि भाई timing को हम use कर सकते हैं कि नहीं. But I think the best way to have the timing aspect right is to basically ensure that you start early, invest regularly, and have patience and let that investment thrive. So to me, in order of descending order of importance, behavior, asset allocation, fund selection, and timing is what I would suggest as the ways to look at it.
On the dollar front, I think he's, so basically let me answer that a bit. 84 to 98, you said in 5 years, not going to happen. If anything, I believe that now the depreciation of the INR vis-a-vis the dollar will in fact slow down quite appreciably. One is that US is cutting rates, right? That's making their dollar looking very unattractive. I mean, money flows out. When you cut rates, obviously you're looking at money flowing out to higher growth economies as such. So that's what's going to happen. And by the way, the rupee depreciated because of that only. The way, and US is a master at this game. It's a reserve currency. So what he did when he was facing commodity inflation was he rapidly increased interest rates in his own country, right? As a result, he made his dollar stronger vis-a-vis all the global currencies. Forget about emerging markets. Even developed markets saw their currencies depreciating against the dollar, right? Effectively, what he did was he exported out inflation to the world. He was buying more commodities for the same dollar, and the world was buying lesser, right? So it was exporting out inflation, and that he managed very perfectly. But now the problem is homegrown service inflation. There's no currency arbitrage there. That's why he's very clear that I don't want to keep the rates high. Now I want my unemployment to go off, right? So that's why he's cutting the rates so drastically. And I don't see our rupee depreciating to that extent. In fact, I won't say it'll appreciate also, by the way, but I believe that a lot of money will flow into India, making our currency much more attractive than the dollar.
Okay, so that's all. So we can continue the conversation after we're done. So, Kanakji, it's handing it over to you.
Thank you so much. I think the sharing was phenomenal, and we all can give a big round. So I'll request you all to please be there on the stage so that I'll request some of our friends to please come up and do the honor. To start with, Abhishek, I'll request you to come up. And we'll recognize Mr. Ganesh Mohan first. This order. And then Gaurav can come next. Gaurav, yeah. Bihag bhai. Parag bhai. Next is to Mr. Venugopal. Rajesh ji.